Hey everyone, in chapter 4 practice tests, I'm going to try to go through most of these, if not all of them. Some of them are a bit repetitive for practice sake. But starting with 1 and 2, and then also if I do go over one a little too quick, or you just didn't understand, or one of the ones I might potentially skip over, you can always come in and get extra help or message me on Remind. Let's go ahead and start with number 1 and number 2. A quick review that in chapter 3 we started working with functions, and in chapter 4 we started working with piecewise functions, where the difference is you will usually see this little curly bracket, which implies that if I plug in a number, it depends on where that number would fall, if I can even use it, or what my output would be. So these here are like my inputs, and depending on whether my inputs are, in this case, less than or equal to 4, I would use this equation. If I get any input that's 5 or greater, then I use this equation. And if it's just an actual number, then that is just going to be a horizontal line, and those are actually pretty nice to work with. But let's find the domain and range. Remember, the domain are our possible x's, or our inputs, and our range are our possible y's. X's go horizontally, y's are up and down. The domain is often very easy to find in these cases. I can look at these two pieces of information. If it even helps, I can make a number line, and there would be an open circle at 4 and a closed circle at 5, and I would shade to the left of the 4 and to the right of the 5. So there's no overlap. I have to do an or situation, so x is less than 4 or x is greater than or equal to 5. That's my domain. Now my range is a little bit tougher, a little bit more work involved. Not necessarily from my second equation, because if I was to graph that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything 5 or bigger is going to be 3, and that's it. So 6, 7, 8, 9, anything in between will be 3. So what I really have to consider is that top equation. Now I kind of have this barrier at 4, where this equation, whether it's going up to that like barrier, or that would be down, or going up, or it was straight across, it would stop right at the 4. So no matter what these are, they would be open circles. So let's figure out what kind of line that looks like. That would help us with the, actually I don't want to erase all this stuff here. Too close still. Let me zoom in or not. Okay, so let me do that. Let's do this one in orange, perhaps. Something very easy for me to use would be 0, simply because if I plug that in, whatever you multiply something by 0, it goes away, so this is just going to be -1. So if I wanted to plot that one, it would be 0, comma, and I guess I have to make some more grid marks. Oops. Doing this in orange, 0, comma, -1. Well, what if I did f of 1? Well, that would be -3/4 times 1 minus 1, or -3/4 minus 1, or -1.75. And I'm going to go ahead and convert that to decimal, so it'll be a little easier to graph. And okay, so this is going to continue on this trend of a downward looking graph. So let me figure out, even though f of 4 doesn't work, I could plug it in to get an idea of what it would be just before, because just smaller, like that 3.99999, will almost follow the same pattern. So this is going to be -3 minus 1, or -4. So 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be like that. So, it looks like this range actually goes up for forever because it's going to keep going up and it won't have a stop. But it does have a low point. And the low point is right there. So in this case, my range is going to be y strictly greater than -4. Let's try another one. Number 2. Another piecewise function. This time there's 3 parts. Let's make a number line to figure out my range. So it looks like the numbers they use are -1, 1, and 4. So let's graph the first one. The first one says anything strictly between 1 and 4. And then the second one says, maybe I'll use a different color, strictly less than 1, and so I have an overlap here, strictly less than 1 or greater than or equal to -1. Okay, so far the first two, I've used everything -1 included up till just under 4 except for +1. And the last one tells me strictly less than and less than here. So even though the red is an open circle, the pink is closed. The only gap in between what I have here is at 1 and 4. So my x's could be less than 1, could be less than 1, that includes everything pink and red, so let's consider the green. Or let's see, maybe I could maybe not. X less than 4, greater than 1, and trying to think if there was a nice way. Perhaps I could say this was no, not necessarily, but this is my domain right here. It is either less than 1 or greater than 1, but still less than 4. Let's check out my range. Let's see here. These two are very easy. The -2 or 3. So we'll see if that comes into play. But first I would like to consider this one, where if I had a graph, I would consider it from 1, 2, 3, 4. What is it going to be? Okay, so let's figure out, even though, oops, I keep accidentally hitting that. Let's figure out g of 1 and let's figure out g of 4. And even though those won't be closed circles when I plot them, they'll be open circles and I can connect everything in between with a straight line. So g of 1 would be 4 minus 1 or 3. So at 1 it'll be at 3. And then for 4, be 4 minus 4 or 0. And it'll be right here. So I've got a straight line like this. Now, let's do those other two. This one here, if it is between -1 and +1, so I have to put a few more marks here. It is at -2. So here, I've got a closed circle there, and then all the way to here with an open circle. Actually, sorry. This one is an open circle, and this one's closed. And then I'll have to consider anything less than 1, strictly less than 1 I should specify, is 3. So anything less than 1, less than -1 is at 3. So it's going to go like this. Alright, so I can tell my range will never go outside of this like little window here. So the highest it could be is 3. Okay, even though I have an open circle here and an open circle here, these are solid circles if I was to fill them in. And the lowest point it gets to is 0. So my y's would be less than or equal to 0 or strictly greater than 0, and that would be my